Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This is Troy from Cichlid Bros. In today's video, I'm going to be walking through a care guide and a species profile on the Apistogramma. This cichlid is on the smaller end, but they come in a ton of different varieties and have some great color, especially the males. Can't wait to talk through more of that, so let's dive right in. I have one Apistogramma in my 150-gallon South American cichlid tank. Let's take a closer look. Out of all the fish in this tank, the one fish I get asked the most about is my Apistogramma. It is the smallest cichlid in this tank. It is actually a dwarf South American cichlid, and they are an awesome fish to keep. One of the first things that stands out about the Apistogramma is the awesome color. Right here I have an Apistogramma Macmasteri, which has really cool red and yellow and different blue in its face. But you can find many different types and variations of Apistogramma that look very different but also very cool. Some of your most common types of Apistogramma are the Cacatuoides or the orange flash. I really like these types. There's also the Borellii, the Trifasciata, and many others, and they all come in different color patterns. There's even albino types of all of these. As mentioned, they're from South America, and their ideal tank setup will be some combination of sand, driftwood, and rocks. I would also recommend some live plants, as they do seem to enjoy that extra cover and just feeling more secure in the aquarium. Sometimes they can be a bit shy, but if you have the right tank setup, a large enough tank, and dither fish in your aquarium, I've noticed that they come out way more often and they're very interactive with the owner. The Apisto is a dwarf cichlid, and it only reaches about 3 to 3.5 in max size. So my Apistogramma here is probably full grown. I've had them for about 2.5 to 3 years now. And due to this smaller size, you can keep them in smaller aquariums than a lot of your other cichlids, especially your bigger South American cichlids. If you're going to be keeping just one as a centerpiece or maybe keeping a pair of Apistos, I would recommend a 20-gallon tank size as a minimum. But if you're going to be adding more tank mates and a lot of other decor to the tank, I would suggest going up to a 30 or something larger if you can. I originally had this Apistogramma in a 10-gallon tank, and I really didn't think it was enough space for him, so I was really happy to give him this much larger tank size with a 150-gallon aquarium. When it comes to Apistogramma, the males and females will look very different. You'll notice a male has all the color and they'll be slightly larger, whereas the female will be a bit more washed out. Since the Apistogramma is from South America, their ideal water parameters will be lower pH and softer water, along with your standard tropical temperatures. For pH, anywhere from 6 to 7 is ideal, where temperatures can range from your upper 70s to your lower 80s. I have my tank at 78 degrees, my pH isn't ideal, and my water is pretty hard, but my Apistogramma has thrived in those conditions. I think you'll be able to get away with those types of parameters if the Apistogramma isn't wild caught and they're tank bred, and also if you keep the rest of your parameters in check. That means no ammonia and no nitrite at all, and keeping your nitrates in check as well. The live plants would definitely help with that, so again, I recommend having a planted aquarium with your Apisto, but hopefully you're keeping all those parameters in check, which is the most important thing, and that way you don't really have to be chasing your pH or your water hardness levels. The Apistogramma will usually hang out towards the bottom half of your aquarium, and they aren't very aggressive. They sometimes can be feisty if they're in a small group and there are too many males, or they're in a tank size that's too small. But overall, they can be kept with some pretty peaceful community type fish. When it comes to tank mates, I would recommend doing as I say rather than what I'm doing right here. So even though I have this Apistogramma in a cichlid community tank, it's not always what I would recommend when it comes to tank mates. So let's get into some of the other options you could find out there. My 150-gallon tank has some medium to larger South American cichlids, but all of these guys are super peaceful and they're in an ideal tank setup, so it has worked out really well with the Apisto. I also added my Apistogramma when it was at full size, so that helped them as well. But in a normal tank setup, I would recommend calmer, more peaceful community fish. Something like the neon or cardinal tetra would do really well. Most types of plecos, especially bristlenose plecos, would be really good options. I really like the types of fish that will school or provide activity to the top of the tank while the Apisto kind of occupies the bottom. And then when it comes to matching them with different cichlids, obviously you need a much larger tank, and you'd have to be really careful with the cichlids you pair it with. I think some of your more peaceful types like the Keyhole cichlid would be awesome. The festivum would usually work, and I really think the angelfish is a pretty good option for most Apistogramma. I have seen them kept with discus, although sometimes those temperatures are on the higher end for the Apistogramma long term, but I do think it would work. And then in some geophagus setups, they could work. I do think you need to find the more peaceful geophagus like the Spheni. Something like the Steindachnerai might not work because it's a little more aggressive when it comes to a geophagus species. So you just have to be really careful if you're trying to mix it with different cichlids. And when it comes to breeding the Apistogramma, it's relatively straightforward. I would recommend getting some type of cave for your Apistogramma, or setting up your decor in a fashion that they have a little area to get away from everyone else in the tank. As mentioned, the male will have the color and the female won't, so just make sure you have a pair in the tank and you have a 10-gallon or larger. I would maybe give them a sand bottom with some different driftwood, plants, rocks, and one trick to get them to breed is just to bump up your temperature to maybe 80 to 82 degrees. You could also feed them some live baby brine shrimp or some frozen foods, which could induce breeding as well. And when they are going to breed, they will go into that rock cave that you set up, and they are egg layers, so the female will lay the eggs, and when the fry does hatch, they will guard that area pretty aggressively. They're really good parents. And when it comes to feeding, Apistogramma will readily accept most foods. I haven't seen them be picky eaters, and a variety of foods are recommended. I would recommend a high quality pellet, flake food, or occasional frozen food such as frozen brine shrimp or bloodworms. I use extreme pellets since they sink fairly quickly and the Apistogramma can get them right away. The links to the extreme food that I do use are in the description if you need it. When the Apistogramma is small, I like to give them the nano pellets from Extreme. I've really enjoyed keeping different Apistos in the past, and I would like to set up a bigger breeding project with different types of Apistos in the future. It's really an awesome fish, and one I would definitely recommend to most fish keepers, especially if you have the tank set up and requirements. They should be just fine, and it'll be a really rewarding fish to keep. Okay guys, so that does it for today's video. I hope you found that information helpful or interesting. If you'd like to see a care guide done on any other types of cichlids, make sure to leave that down in the comment section below. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next week.